Homelessness, worse. Housing unattainable, street crime endemic, core services decayed. These are the realities of living in San Jose's District 3. Our city government has failed to halt the decline of our neighborhoods. The city is stuck. It's time for a realistic, no-nonsense breakout plan that will deliver visible change. I'm Irene Smith, independent candidate running for San Jose D3 Downtown City Council, and I'm running to make that change happen right now. Over the next 15 minutes, I'd like to walk you through how our city government has failed D3 and my 5-step plan to get D3 back on track. Our failure didn't happen naturally. Many similar cities across the U.S. do not have our problems. This failure is systemic in San Jose because our city government isn't structured or managed in a way that leads to success, and D3 pays the price. Here's where we go wrong. First, our city doesn't listen to citizens very well. While our elected council members ostensibly manage our city staff, the reality is the unelected bureaucrats often run roughshod over the council and treat citizen input as an afterthought. Number 2, we're addicted to big. Our city government looks for gigantic, one-size-fits-all answers to every problem, creating big, costly, unwieldy programs that don't really solve specific problems. This addiction to bigness privileges other big power structures, big government, big business, big labor, big nonprofits, and shortchanges the little guy. That's us, neighbors, neighborhoods, and small businesses. And third, lack of accountability. When a program doesn't work, nobody gets fired. Nothing changes, and the city blithely proceeds to double down on the failure. The housing department is the poster child for this systemic lack of accountability, burning through over $1 billion in the last 3 years, while homelessness has gone up by 11%. We need to make radical reforms to almost every element of how City Hall is run and how D3 gets its problems addressed. Let me walk you through each plank of my 5-step recovery plan for D3, starting with fixing the debacle, which is our housing policy. Here's why the city's approach to homelessness is a failure. It's just a hamster wheel of allowing and then dismantling homeless encampments. On top of that, there's a complete lack of financial foresight for new buildings. It's an outrage that some supposedly affordable units cost $1 million per door for brick and mortar. We are failing our unhoused neighbors by letting them live in dangerous, unhealthy, and unsanitary conditions and degrading the D3 neighborhoods around them. The solution, my incremental ladder of housing success, which meets the client where they are at and puts an emphasis on stabilization, services, and treatment first, instead of waiting for expensive new housing to be built in a decade. We can do this right now. The city's response to our affordable housing crisis has been a complete, expensive bust because it has been strategically flawed from the get-go. It has focused almost exclusively on building new, subsidized housing, which costs up to $1 million and a decade to build, leaving people stranded and abandoned on creeks in their cars and sidewalks. The strategy gave short shrift to options besides just building new apartments. We can also focus on using the thousands and thousands of available unused units and shelters. This means repurposing and reinventing vacant office buildings, underutilized government space, vacant bedrooms in houses, vacant motels, hotels, and so on. We should include incentives for owners of vacant houses, rentals, living spaces to join this program. Use our existing resources and house people now. Many of our hardworking neighbors can't even enter our rental market because of insane housing prices. It will take us decades to fix this supply problem. So the answer right now isn't just new subsidized housing that takes too long. The answer is existing subsidized housing right now to prevent further homelessness. And we can do it by expanding our own Section 8 voucher program to include those who need it through a specific San Jose program. This voucher program would work the same as the Fed HUD program, but we would be more responsive to tenants and make it easier for housing providers. We can do this right now, and I would fund this by redirecting unallocated monies under the housing department's control. Anyone who's ever tried to give input to City Hall knows this story. You send a letter and you get an automated response. You go to a community meeting and have to wait 3 hours to talk while paid advocates hog the meeting. You speak at City Hall and everybody smiles and votes the way they were already planning to vote. Anyone who works in business knows that customer feedback is a serious professional responsibility that the city is currently acting like it's 1970. We need a single, empowered customer feedback organization that uses up-to-date technology and techniques. The city needs to get varied source feedback, publicly report back on what D3 citizens are saying and feeling, and put in place action plans based on community input. That organization needs to be centralized and have an independent board overseeing it, not just uncoordinated city staff departments and council members. I propose that we launch a pilot program for D3 with an emphasis on housing as part of rolling out this citywide program. D3 has more than 1,800 homeless residents, according to the city's 2019 census. That's a whopping 300% more than District 6, which has 568. This really highlights the fact that D3 has unique urban problems that the rest of the city doesn't have, yet we govern D3 the same way we do the semi-rural neighborhoods of Almaden Valley. We apply the same restrictions, the same policies, the same funding mechanisms, the same management model to urban downtown as we do for horse farms and 4-acre mansions. It's not a successful approach. D3 needs to be able to identify, design, and fund our unique solutions with a modicum of independence from the rest of the city because our needs are so different. Let me give you an example. Citywide, there's no budget for towing RVs. D3 is overrun by RVs and abandoned vehicles. It's a critical quality of life issue for residents and small businesses. But D10 and other districts do not have an RV towing problem, so when it comes to voting for an RV towing budget, it's dismissed. The same phenomenon, the city choosing a one-size-fits-all approach that doesn't work for urban D3, applies to the citing policy, the vehicle abatement policy, police foot patrols, encampment abatements, sidewalk management, and other issues. Here's how we get started on beginning the new process. We start with a downtown recovery caucus, an organization that comprises all of the adjoining districts, as well as neighborhood and business leaders. And our first order of business is to create a downtown success metrics report card that we will hold city staff accountable to for improving downtown. In summary, the problems in D3 require a radical change agent, a dramatic rethinking of how City Hall identifies, addresses, funds, manages, and holds itself accountable. My D3 recovery plan isn't the full answer, but it is a good start, and it is much more honest, objective, and realistic approach to solving D3 problems than simply doubling down on the failed policies of the past, which is essentially what my opponent offers. Please visit my website for more info on this plan or feel free to contact me directly.